In terms of roller coasters, I personally find American manufacturer S&S among the most interesting in terms of what they put out and when. Truly an amalgamation of acquired ideas from the bankruptcy of Arrow, their own innovations, and their attempts to have a new twist on old ideas. There's a lot to dive in here to justify the title of this video. Let me get into it. Dating back to 1994, S&S did not get into the coaster industry until Arrow went bankrupt and they had to sell off all of their assets. S&S bought the whole of the company and founded an LLC called S&S Arrow. Shortly before Arrow went bankrupt, another manufacturer did as well. When Custom Coasters International, or CCI, went out of business, S&S snagged not assets but employees. This meant that S&S had both the proper people and technology in place from the recent acquisitions to begin making roller coasters. What should a company do after founding its own LLC using the name of arguably the most iconic steel manufacturer of all time? Probably get into making steel coasters, but that's not what S&S did. They made 4 wooden coasters and promptly got rid of the S&S Arrow branding just 2 years later in 2004 after the relative failure and discontinuation of their wooden model. Okay, I have to admit something. I lied a little bit earlier, but it was better for the flow of the video and now I'm coming clean. S&S built 2 coasters before the Arrow and GCI acquisitions. These rides were built using S&S's flat ride specialty, compressed air. Being known for their drop and launch towers that use compressed air, in 2001, they realized that on a mechanical level, the difference between a launch tower and a launch coaster is 90 degrees. These rides often offer insane acceleration, so much in fact that the second compressed air launch coaster ever made is currently standing but not operating due to the fact that it fractured 4 spines due to its insane acceleration. That's all I have to say about this coaster model for now, but keep it in mind, trust me. Back in 2004 and the failure of their wooden coaster, S&S worked with Silver Dollar City in 2005 to convert Buzzsaw Falls into a new air-powered launch coaster to recover from their woodens. Buzzsaw Falls, or Powder Keg as it would become known, is truly a one-of-a-kind coaster. It featured a brand new air launch and layout leading into the old lift hill of Buzzsaw Falls for the rest of that layout. Powder Keg still operates and it helped S&S get back on their feet after a rough 2004, so I see this as a win. 2005 also saw the debut of a new model from this manufacturer, the Screaming Squirrel. Information on this model is relatively difficult to find, so I'm going to keep this brief. This appears to be a sit-down coaster with saxophone elements that flipped riders from totally upright to totally upside down, and the definite precursor to what was to come from S&S. Only 3 of these coasters were ever built, and 1 remains operating to this day. In between the failures of the Screaming Squirrel, S&S somehow made the safest and at the same time riskiest bet they could make and debuted their first 4th dimension coaster entitled Egenica. Finally dipping into the extensive backlog of Arrow designs, they essentially took X2, gave it every steroid possible, and then sent it off to Japan. This was a safe bet because the ride model was already semi-established with X2 being halfway across the world, which also made sure that the markets were not conflicting. It, however, was inherently risky because of the model that they were dealing with. The 4th dimension coaster is the coaster that cost so much it put Arrow out of business. Now that I think about that, the success of this ride is kind of like S&S dancing on Arrow's grave. Whatever, moving on. The success of this one coaster seemingly set S&S on a path to never officially discontinuing a model again. Their next model was kind of the spiritual successor to Screaming Squirrel. This time it was called the El Loco, and the general concept remains the same. Tight turns and weird banks define the overall build of this ride, but one thing makes it stand out. El Locos are known for their vertical or beyond vertical drop. While this model has not yet been discontinued officially, the last one was built in 2014, so I consider the El Loco to be shelved for now at least. During the 6-year span of El Locos being built, S&S peppered their reliable models with an addition of 4 air launch coasters and a 4th dimension coaster, that one being in China. They also produced a one-off model called a Free Fly that is basically the precursor to a model we will look at in just a little bit. Here's some footage of the Free Fly so you have a visual. 2015 changed S&S forever. They took the concept of a 4th dimension coaster but removed the controlled spin aspect of it to create a model called the 4D Free Spin. These rides were cheap thrill rides that took up very little land, so of course Six Flags saw dollar signs and went on a spending spree. Of the 11 coasters sold from this model, 8 of them went to Six Flags. This is where I would like to circle back to the title. This ride model is delightfully average and serves as a great picture of S&S as a whole. On paper, the free spin is a cool concept. Riders rotate through the layout and weight distribution plays a large part in how that rotation takes place. Due to this, it is effectively a different ride experience every single time, however that ride experience is just okay. Let me preface with this. I have not personally been to a park that has one of these, so I'm kind of speaking largely from the state of mind that I've seen inside the enthusiast community, but man, these rides are mid. Not only is the duration short and whippy in a bad way if you don't rotate enough, which again is based on weight distribution, but I am led to believe that the axis of rotation is slightly off center mass, which is mildly disorienting sometimes. When you get a good ride with your preferred amount of inversions, ultimately these are pretty fun apparently, but the lack of controlled spin at all makes these wild cards on their best of days. With the success of their free spins, S&S rapidly came out with new coaster models. 2017 saw the Steeplechase, but that has not been sold to any parks yet, so let's skip past that one. In 2018, they added their first family inverted coaster at Dutch Wonderland, the park that won Best Family Park at the Golden Tickets this year. My understanding, having gone to college about 40 minutes from the park at that time, is that this coaster was a great hit for the park and fits its niche perfectly. 2019 saw not one but two new models, one of which has been built to date. That is the Looping Coaster. Debuting with a record-breaking steel curtain at Kennywood, their first sit-down looper featured the world's tallest inversion and the world's most downtime. Okay, that second one is inaccurate, but this model has been so unreliable that I have heard that S&S got sued over it. They have not built any since. That leaves us with one new model, the Axis Coaster. Let me start off by saying, while that I do believe S&F's coasters have been average thus far, I strongly believe the Axis Coaster will be the model that launches them past average into great. I have such hope for this model, but why? The Axis Coaster seems to take lessons learned from every other model that S&S has made throughout the years and jam them all into one super cool concept. All we really have about this model is some animated promo and the footage from people being invited out to ride the prototype, so bear with me if some parts of this are a little vague. The Axis Coaster is arguably the most innovative thing in the roller coaster industry since the RMC iBox track in terms of the ride experience and elements it will allow. The Axis Coaster essentially takes the concept of a 4D free spin, rotates the axis of rotation to be behind the rider, adds a magnetically controlled spin, and puts the riders above the track, or below it, or next to it? Basically, this model combines a sit-down coaster with a wing coaster with an inverted coaster, all on one track with one train. The possibility of the elements are endless here. Airtime hills could turn into barrel rolls on the way down without any banking in the track, a valley can be a hang time moment, straight track can be a heartline roll. It's really only limited by the imagination of the engineers. Honestly, one of my goals as a growing YouTuber is to ride that prototype in Utah, or at least be invited to the media day of the first American Axis coaster. That's how strongly I believe this model will change the industry forever. So yeah, basically that's a brief history of the S&S Coaster Manufacturing Division. They're currently manufacturing 2 coasters in China, and if their last 6 years go to show anything, we might get a new model announced soon. I still believe that they are average currently, however they do have potential to do amazing things in the near future. Let me know what you think in the comments, I look forward to talking about it. Now that I'm more into the swing of YouTube, I'm going to try to put out one weekend video a week and one weekday video a week, plus my Tuesday live podcast episodes. I'm Josh from Station Wait, have a great day.